I set my wine glass down carefully, maintaining the same pleasant expression I'd worn for the past 2 hours. Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' estate in Connecticut had become an annual exercise in endurance, and this year was proving no different. "Sarah, honey, are you still at that little branch on Maple Street?" Aunt Patricia asked, her tone dripping with false sweetness. She adjusted her Hermes scarf. The one she'd mentioned cost $3,000 at least 5 times since arriving. "I work in the financial district," I said simply, cutting into my turkey. Right. Banking." Uncle Robert waved his hand dismissively. He'd made his fortune in commercial real estate and never let anyone forget it. "Patricia, remember when Sarah was so excited about getting that teller position? What was that, 5 years ago?" 7, I corrected quietly. 7 years. My mother's voice carried that particular pitch of disappointment I'd grown accustomed to. "And still in the same entry-level position. Sarah, don't you have any ambition?" My older brother Marcus smirked from across the table. He'd made partner at his law firm last year and had brought up that fact approximately 12 times since appetizers. "Some people are just comfortable with mediocrity, Mom. Not everyone can be a high achiever." His wife Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. "It's actually quite noble, really. Someone has to do the simple jobs. I always make sure to be extra nice to bank tellers. They work so hard counting all day." "Do you at least get benefits?" my younger sister Rachel asked. She was 26 and had just launched her third startup, a cryptocurrency venture capital fund that she'd been explaining in excruciating detail for the past hour. "Because I offer amazing packages to all my employees. Even the administrative staff. I have excellent benefits," I said, taking a sip of water. "Well, that's something." Dad leaned back in his chair, swirling his scotch. "Though I had hoped at least one of my children would follow me into surgery. Marcus has the law firm, Rachel has her business ventures, but you, Sarah?" He trailed off, shaking his head. "She's happy, dear," Mom said in that tone that clearly indicated I shouldn't be. Not everyone needs to run a department or manage people. Some people are perfectly content just processing transactions. "Speaking of which," Marcus interjected, "Jennifer and I are closing on that property in the Hamptons next week. The one with the private beach. We'll need to transfer some funds around. Sarah, you could probably help us with that, right? Simple wire transfer stuff." "Maybe she can get us priority service," Jennifer giggled. "Use that employee discount or whatever." I smiled and said nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the third time in the last 20 minutes. I ignored it. "You know what Sarah's problem is?" Uncle Robert announced, as if I weren't sitting right there. "No vision. No drive. She's been in that same little branch for 7 years, probably never even asked for a promotion. Just content to show up, count money, go home. It's a respectable job," Aunt Patricia said in a tone that suggested it absolutely wasn't. "Not everyone can be a CEO or a doctor. The world needs regular workers too." "I just wish she'd networked more," Dad said. "Use the family name. I've offered to make introductions at the hospital, get her into medical billing or something with more prestige, but she insists on staying in that retail banking position." My cousin Kevin, who'd been mostly quiet while demolishing his third helping of stuffing, finally spoke up. "Isn't it kind of embarrassing though? I mean, Sarah's what, 33? And she's still basically doing what a high school graduate could do? No offense, but my girlfriend's daughter works as a teller while finishing her associate's degree. She's 19. Kevin." Aunt Patricia gasped, but she didn't actually look offended. None of them did. "What?" "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. 7 years in the same position? That's not loyalty, that's stagnation." He shrugged. "In finance, if you're not moving up, you're moving out." "Kevin works in finance," Aunt Patricia said proudly. "Hedge fund analyst. He manages a $12 million portfolio." "Impressive," my mother said, shooting me a pointed look. My phone buzzed again. I felt the vibration pattern. Priority alert. I let it go to voicemail. "You know what I think?" Rachel leaned forward conspiratorially. "Sarah's afraid of responsibility. It's a real thing, fear of success. Some people self-sabotage because they're more comfortable being small. That's actually a fascinating psychological phenomenon," Marcus added. "We see it in law all the time. People who settle for less because reaching for more feels too risky." "It's not risk aversion in Sarah's case," Dad said clinically, his surgeon's mind always analyzing. It's lack of capability. Not everyone has the intellect or drive for leadership positions. Sarah was always more of a B student. Solid, reliable, but never exceptional. There's nothing wrong with that, Mom added quickly, which somehow made it worse. We can't all be Marcus or Rachel. Someone has to be average. Jennifer was checking her phone. Oh, look at this. There's a new study about career stagnation and generational wealth. Apparently, children from privileged backgrounds who don't achieve at the same level as their parents often experience deep shame and... She looked up, realizing everyone was staring. Oh. Sorry, that was insensitive. It's fine, I said calmly. More wine, anyone? See, this is what I mean, Uncle Robert said. No fire. No passion. Just acceptance. Sarah, when I was your age, I was closing million-dollar deals left and right. I was hungry. You seem content. Content with counting pennies, Kevin muttered, earning a few snickers. My phone rang. Actually rang this time, not just vibrated. The ringtone cut through the conversation. A distinctive tone that made me reach for my pocket immediately. Sarah, honestly, Mom sighed. We're at dinner. Can't whoever it is wait. I looked at the screen. It was my direct line, the one only 7 people in the world had. I stood up. Excuse me. I need to take this. Probably her branch manager, Rachel whispered loudly, asking her to cover someone's shift. I walked into the hallway already answering. Williams. Director, I apologize for the interruption. It was James, my chief of staff. We have a situation. The merger talks with Continental Bank have collapsed. Their board is threatening to pull out of the entire restructuring deal. We're talking about a $50 billion portfolio at risk. I glanced back at the dining room where I could hear my family laughing about something. Details. Continental CEO just resigned. Effective immediately. Some kind of scandal. Their board is in chaos, and they're using the leadership vacuum as grounds to void the merger agreement. The Fed is concerned about market stability if this falls apart. Chairman Morrison is personally requesting your presence. Where is he? Here. In Connecticut. He's at the Fairfield Country Club with several Continental board members. He drove here himself when he couldn't reach you. Said he needed his best closer on this immediately. I processed this. Tell him I'll be there in 20 minutes. Director, he's asking if he should come to you. He said, and I quote, I'll drive to her front door if necessary. Sarah Williams is the only person who can save this deal. I closed my eyes briefly. Give me the address. I'll meet him there. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to my family's conversation drift through the doorway. Probably has to work Black Friday tomorrow. At least the hours are stable. Should have gone to business school like I told her. I walked back to the dining room. Everyone looked up. I have to go, I said simply. Go. Mom looked scandalized. Sarah, we haven't even had dessert. And it's Thanksgiving. What could possibly be so important? Work emergency. Dad laughed. A bank teller emergency? What, did someone deposit a check wrong? Someone probably needs her to balance a register, Marcus said. Can't it wait until tomorrow? I picked up my purse. Unfortunately, no. This is ridiculous, Rachel said. You're seriously leaving Thanksgiving dinner for some retail banking issue? Sarah, you need to learn to set boundaries. This is why people in entry-level positions get taken advantage of. Let her go, Uncle Robert said dismissively. If her little branch is that desperate, she should help out. It's not like she has anything important planned tonight. I was halfway to the door when I heard the cars pull up outside. Multiple cars. The kind of vehicles that don't just pull up to random houses in Connecticut. My father opened the front door first, probably to complain about the noise. He froze. I watched from the hallway as 3 black SUVs parked in the circular driveway. Security personnel stepped out first, doing what security personnel do. And then a man I recognized instantly stepped out of the middle vehicle. Chairman Morrison of the Federal Reserve. Flanked by 2 Secret Service agents. Oh my God, my mother whispered. Is that? What is the Federal Reserve Chairman doing here? Marcus said, his voice climbing an octave. Chairman Morrison walked straight to the front door. My father stood there, mouth open, as one of the most powerful financial figures in the world approached our family home. I apologize for the intrusion, Morrison said in his distinctive voice, the one usually heard addressing Congress or being quoted in the Wall Street Journal. I'm looking for Director Sarah Williams. I was told this was her family's residence. The silence in that foyer was absolute. Director. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Morrison looked past my father and spotted me in the hallway. His face relaxed. Sarah. Thank God. We have a situation. I walked forward calmly. Chairman Morrison. I was just heading to meet you at the club. No time. The Continental Board is fracturing as we speak. We need you to take control of this negotiation immediately. You're the only regional director they trust, and honestly, you're the only person in the Federal Reserve System I trust to close a deal this size under this kind of pressure. My entire family was staring. Dad's face had gone pale. Marcus looked like he might faint. Regional director? Rachel said faintly. Morrison glanced at her, then back at me. I'm pulling rank here, Sarah. I know it's Thanksgiving, but we have a $50 billion portfolio at risk and a potential market panic if this merger falls apart. Continental's board is threatening to liquidate assets. The entire northeastern banking sector could destabilize. I understand, sir. I kept my voice level, professional. I'll need my briefing file and the latest board statements. Already in the car. Morrison gestured to one of the SUVs. We have a full team standing by. Treasury is monitoring. The FDIC has been alerted. But Sarah, they've specifically requested you. Continental's board chair called me personally and said if anyone can salvage this, it's you. They trust your judgment on institutional restructuring. Give me 5 minutes to get my materials. I walked past my family to the staircase. No one said a word. I went to my old bedroom where I kept my secure laptop and briefing documents for emergencies just like this. When I came back down 3 minutes later, my family was still standing in the exact same positions, watching Chairman Morrison make calls in our foyer. Director Williams, one of the Secret Service agents said, holding open the SUV door. I paused at the doorway and looked back at my family. My mother's hand was over her mouth. My father was gripping the doorframe. Marcus, Rachel, Jennifer, Kevin, Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia. All of them frozen in various states of shock. Director. My mother finally managed. Sarah, what is he talking about? Chairman Morrison ended his call and turned to my parents. I apologize for interrupting your holiday. Your daughter is the regional director of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. She oversees banking operations and financial stability for the entire northeastern United States. Her portfolio includes supervision of roughly $50 billion in assets and oversight of 312 financial institutions. He checked his watch. And right now, she's the only person who can prevent a banking crisis. 50 billion? Dad whispered. Regional director? Marcus said. But she works at a branch on Maple Street. I smiled slightly. I own the building that branches in, Marcus, along with 47 other properties in the financial district. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York is headquartered in Manhattan. I've worked there for 7 years. You said you were a teller, Rachel accused. No, I corrected gently. You all assumed I was a teller. I said I worked in banking. Which is accurate. Morrison was pulling up something on his phone. Sarah, the Treasury Secretary, just texted. She wants you to loop her in the moment we have a preliminary agreement. She's standing by. Understood. I looked at my family one more time. I'll call tomorrow. Enjoy your dessert. I walked out to the SUV. Behind me, I could hear multiple conversations erupting at once, but the soundproofed door closed, cutting them off. Your family didn't know? Morrison asked as we pulled away. I don't discuss my work at family gatherings. He laughed, a genuine sound. Sarah, you're managing one of the largest regional banking portfolios in the country. You've personally overseen 4 major mergers in the last 3 years. You testified before the Senate Banking Committee last month. How did they not know? They never asked what I actually did. They assumed and I let them. Morrison shook his head, amused. Well, they know now. Now let's talk about Continental. Their interim CEO is completely out of his depth. The board is split 3 ways on how to proceed. And we have about 2 hours before Asian markets open and this becomes a global story. I opened my briefing file, my mind already shifting fully into director mode. Behind us, my family's house disappeared into the distance. The Continental Bank board meeting was held in a private room at the Fairfield Country Club. By the time we arrived, the situation had deteriorated further. The board members were seated around a large conference table, most of them looking exhausted and angry. Several were on phones. The tension in the room was palpable. "Gentlemen," Morrison said as we entered, "Director Williams is here." 12 faces turned toward me. I recognized most of them. I'd worked with Continental's board on previous regulatory matters. James Hartwell, the board chair, stood up immediately. "Sarah. Thank God." He looked genuinely relieved. "This whole situation is a nightmare." I set my briefcase down and took the seat Morrison indicated at the head of the table. "Walk me through what happened in the last 3 hours." For the next 40 minutes, I listened as the board members explained the implosion. Their CEO had been caught in a financial scandal involving personal trading on privileged information. He'd resigned to avoid prosecution. The COO had resigned in solidarity. The entire executive leadership structure had collapsed in a span of 6 hours. And now, with no clear leadership and a massive merger deal hanging in the balance, the board was fracturing. "The merger can't proceed without executive leadership," one board member insisted. "We need to postpone." "Postponing will tank our stock price," another countered. "Investors will see it as instability." "It is instability. If we void the merger agreement, we're exposed to massive penalties," Hartwell said tiredly. "But if we proceed without proper leadership, we're potentially liable for fiduciary negligence." I'd been taking notes. Now I looked up. "You're not going to void the agreement. And you're not going to postpone." The room went silent. "Sarah," Hartwell said carefully, "I appreciate your confidence, but without a CEO, you have interim leadership protocols in your charter. Your CFO, Patricia Chin, can serve as acting CEO for up to 90 days while you conduct a formal search. She's qualified, she's already been through SEC vetting, and she has board confidence." I looked at Patricia, who was sitting at the far end of the table. "Assuming you're willing." Patricia looked startled. Yes, I could do that." "The merger agreement doesn't specify that you need a permanent CEO," I continued. "It requires adequate leadership oversight and regulatory compliance. Acting CEO satisfies both requirements. I'll personally sign off on the Federal Reserve approval with Patricia as acting CEO." "The other banks won't accept," someone started. "Yes, they will," Morrison interjected. "Because Director Williams is telling them to. And when Sarah Williams tells the banking sector something is sound, they listen." I pulled up a document on my tablet. "I've been reviewing your merger structure. The reason this deal makes sense hasn't changed. Continental needs the capital infusion and expanded market presence. The acquiring consortium needs your institutional client base and your commercial lending portfolio. The fundamentals are solid. But the perception is that your board panicked over a personnel issue," I said bluntly. "That's not what I'm going to let happen. Here's what we're going to do. Patricia, you're going to accept the acting CEO position tonight. We're going to draft a press release that goes out before Asian markets open, announcing the leadership transition and confirming that the merger is proceeding on schedule. Chairman Morrison and I will both issue statements confirming Federal Reserve support and regulatory approval." I looked around the table. The Treasury Secretary is standing by to issue a statement of confidence in Continental's stability. I've already spoken with the FDIC, and they're prepared to issue similar assurances. But all of this requires you to commit to the merger. No. Tonight. Hartwell leaned back. "You're asking us to make a billion-dollar decision based on a few hours of analysis? I'm telling you that I've spent 7 years managing banking operations for this region. I've overseen 4 major mergers, including 2 that were significantly more complex than this one. I've testified before Congress on banking stability. And I'm telling you as the Federal Reserve Regional Director for New York, that this merger is sound, your interim leadership structure is adequate, and if you walk away from this deal you'll regret it." Morrison cleared his throat. "I'll add that Director Williams has a perfect track record on merger recommendations. 100% success rate. When she says a deal is sound, it's sound." The board members exchanged glances. Several phones buzzed simultaneously. "That's the Asian markets opening in 15 minutes, I said. If there's no statement from Continental confirming the merger, your stock price drops. The uncertainty spreads. By tomorrow morning you'll have a full-blown confidence crisis. Is that what you want? Hartwell looked at Patricia. Patricia, are you comfortable with this? Patricia's chin straightened in her chair. Yes. If Director Williams is confident in the structure, I'm confident in accepting the acting CEO role. Then we need a board vote, Hartwell said. He looked at me. Sarah, if you're wrong about this. I'm not. The vote took 7 minutes. It was unanimous. Morrison was already on the phone with the Treasury Secretary before the last hand was raised. I opened my laptop and began drafting the regulatory approval documents that would need to accompany Continental's press release. Director Williams, Patricia said quietly as the board members began making calls to their respective constituencies. Thank you. I know this was a risk. It's not a risk, I said, still typing. It's the right call. You're qualified for this position and the merger structure is sound. The only question was whether the board would have the confidence to move forward. Most regional directors wouldn't have taken such a direct role. I glanced up at her. Most regional directors don't like seeing well-structured deals fall apart because of panic. I returned to my typing. You'll do fine, Patricia. And if you need anything during the transition, my office is available. By midnight, the press releases were out. The Federal Reserve statement was issued. The Treasury Secretary's confidence statement was released. The FDIC confirmed their position. And Continental Bank's stock price, when Asian markets opened, barely moved. Morrison and I left the country club at 1 a.m. The crisis was contained. You know, he said as we drove back toward Manhattan, you could have let that deal collapse. It would have been the safer call for you personally. No risk of being wrong. The deal was sound, I said simply. There was no reason to let it fail. Still, taking responsibility for a $50 billion merger on Thanksgiving night, based on a few hours of analysis? That takes confidence. I smiled slightly. Or maybe I just really didn't want to go back for dessert. He laughed. When he dropped me off at my apartment in Manhattan at 2 a.m, he shook his head. Your family really had no idea? Not until tonight. That must have been quite a moment. It was clarifying, I said. The next morning my phone started ringing at 7. I ignored the first 6 calls, all from various family members. I was reviewing the Asian market reports and confirming that the Continental merger was proceeding smoothly. At 9 I finally answered. It was my mother. Sarah Elizabeth Williams, she said, her voice shaking. I have been calling you for 2 hours. I've been working, Mom. The Continental Bank situation required monitoring. Don't you dare be casual about this. The Federal Reserve Chairman was at our house. At our Thanksgiving dinner. You're a director? A regional director? Managing $50 billion. Roughly $50 billion, yes. The exact figure fluctuates based on. Why didn't you tell us? I poured myself coffee. You never asked. We never. Sarah, you let us think you were a bank teller. No, you all assumed I was a bank teller. I told you I worked in banking in the financial district. Which is completely accurate. This is not funny. I'm not laughing, Mom. There was a long pause. Your father wants to talk to you. My father's voice came on the line, sounding strained. Sarah, I owe you an apology. You don't. Let me finish. I've spent years. We've all spent years treating you like you were somehow less successful than your siblings. And you've been managing one of the most important financial portfolios in the country. Why didn't you correct us? I sat down at my kitchen table looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Dad, would it have mattered? If I'd told you 7 years ago that I was a regional director, would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was exaggerating an entry-level position? Silence. You all had very fixed ideas about who I was and what I was capable of, I continued. Trying to change those perceptions seemed exhausting and ultimately pointless. I had work to do. Important work. Work I enjoyed. What you all thought about my job didn't actually affect my ability to do that job. But Sarah, I told you that you lacked capability. That you weren't exceptional. God, I said those things while you were managing billions of dollars and overseeing hundreds of institutions. Yes. You must have been furious. Not really. Disappointed maybe. But not angry. More silence. Then, Your mother wants to know if you're coming to Christmas. I smiled despite myself. Probably. I'll check my schedule. And Sarah? The Federal Reserve Chairman called you his best closer. The Treasury Secretary was standing by for your call. You testified before the Senate Banking Committee. How did we miss all of this? You weren't looking, I said simply. You'd already decided what my story was. I just let you believe it. Over the next few days the calls kept coming. Marcus apologized stiffly, admitting that he'd been misinformed about the scope of my responsibilities. Rachel sent a long text about how she'd always known I was capable of great things. Jennifer wanted to discuss investment strategies. Kevin asked if I was hiring. Uncle Robert sent a formal email asking if I could review his real estate portfolio. Aunt Patricia called to ask if I could introduce her to some banking contacts. I responded politely to all of them but committed to nothing. The Continental Bank merger closed successfully 3 weeks later. Patricia Chin proved to be an excellent acting CEO and was ultimately offered the position permanently. The deal strengthened the northeastern banking sector, provided stability during a volatile period, and was cited by several financial publications as an example of effective crisis management. Chairman Morrison sent me a handwritten note. Thanks for cutting your Thanksgiving short. The banking sector owes you one. I definitely do. On Christmas Eve I drove back to Connecticut. This time when I walked into my parents' house the atmosphere was different. Sarah, my mother said, hugging me perhaps a bit too tightly. We're so glad you could make it. No emergencies tonight, I hope? Not at the moment. The family gathered in the living room. There was an awkward moment when everyone seemed to be waiting for someone else to speak first. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Sarah, we wanted to, that is, we owe you. It's fine, Dad. No, it's not fine. He looked around at the rest of the family. We treated you dismissively for years. We made assumptions about your career, your capabilities, your achievements. And we were completely wrong. Spectacularly wrong, Marcus added. Sarah, I'm an attorney. I should have known better than to make assumptions without evidence. I'm sorry. Rachel nodded. I've been thinking about this a lot. About how I was so focused on my own success that I couldn't see yours. That's really shallow of me. I sat down on the couch. I appreciate the apologies. But I want to be clear about something. My job isn't worth more than being a bank teller. The tellers at our branches work incredibly hard. They serve customers directly. They're often the face of the banking system for regular people. That job has value and dignity. But you're not a teller, my mother said. No. But the problem wasn't that you thought I was a teller. The problem was that you treated me as lesser because you thought I was a teller. The problem was the contempt, not the mistake. The room was quiet. You're right, Uncle Robert said finally. That's exactly right. We were snobs. We valued prestige over people. And Sarah, I'm ashamed of that. So, Rachel said after a moment, do you think you could tell us what you actually do? Like day to day? Because I've been reading about regional directors and it's incredibly complex and I honestly don't understand half of it. I smiled. Sure. But I'm warning you, it's not that exciting. Lots of regulatory compliance review, institutional oversight, risk assessment. Try us, my father said. So I did. I told them about banking regulation, about merger oversight, about the delicate balance of ensuring financial stability while encouraging institutional growth. I explained how the Federal Reserve System works, how regional directors coordinate with the broader financial regulatory framework, how we monitor everything from individual bank solvency to systemic risk. They listened. Actually listened. Asked questions. Tried to understand. It wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard and there were still moments of awkwardness. But it was different. Better. At the end of the evening as I was preparing to leave, my father walked me to my car. Sarah, he said quietly, I spent years pushing you to follow my path. To be a surgeon. To work in medicine. But you found your own path. And it's extraordinary. It's just banking, Dad. No. It's not just anything. He hugged me, something he rarely did. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you. I drove back to Manhattan that night thinking about assumptions and perceptions, about the stories we tell ourselves about other people. About how easy it is to miss what's right in front of us when we've already decided what we're looking at. My phone buzzed with a priority alert. Another situation developing. Nothing critical but something requiring director-level attention. I smiled and headed toward my office. Some things after all never change. The work continues. The responsibility remains. And somewhere in Connecticut, my family was probably still processing the fact that their bank teller daughter had spent the evening explaining financial regulatory policy like it was second nature. As it was. It always had been. They just hadn't been looking.